Imagine an empty, windswept steppe in Central Asia, where golden grasses ripple under the harsh sun and lonely mountain ranges carve the horizon. Here, in this vast wilderness, a tiny killer prepared its silent invasion of the world. It all began in the early 1300s with Yersinia pestis, a microscopic bacteria with a lethal appetite. Hidden inside wild rodents, especially black rats, this bacteria went unnoticed for centuries. The rats lived close to humans, rummaging through grain stores and following the crumbs of ancient caravans that connected empires. Along these trade routes, the veins of medieval commerce, silk, spices, silver, and secrets flowed from east to west. But within the shadow of this flourishing exchange, death nestled quietly in the fur of stowaway rats and the bellies of their fleas. As merchant caravans snaked across deserts and mountain passes, rats scuttled beneath carts, fleas jumped from fur to fabric, and an invisible army advanced toward Europe. Sailors loading spice crates in the Black Sea ports had no idea they carried more than treasures. A single infected flea could spark an inferno. In 1346, ships sailed from the Black Sea toward Mediterranean cities. Dockworkers in Italian harbors watched in horror as sailors staggered off decks, burning with fever, their bodies covered in mysterious lumps. They carried no swords or banners, yet they unleashed more devastation than any invading army. The infection didn't announce itself with a roar. It slipped silently through back alleys, under cellar doors, and across crowded markets. Europe had never faced an enemy so quiet and so unstoppable. The unstoppable wave. The Black Death did not crawl. It surged like a tidal wave, swallowing entire regions before anyone could understand what was happening. Cities were already overcrowded and filthy. Waste flowed openly through narrow streets, animals roamed freely, and people lived piled together in wooden houses. This chaos created the perfect breeding ground for the plague's silent invaders: rats and fleas. In ports like Genoa and Venice, bustling with trade, the disease found its first European strongholds. From there, it leapt across the continent, riding along trade roads, merchant wagons, and pilgrims' cloaks. Within weeks, France trembled, Spain fell silent, and soon England watched in horror as black sails approached its shores. Authorities tried desperate measures. They locked city gates, posted guards, and turned away strangers. But the disease was already inside, in the grain sacks, in the fur of cats, in the seams of travelers' tunics. No wall, no moat, no knight's sword could stop it. Monasteries emptied as monks died praying for mercy. Castles became tombs, their halls echoing with the groans of the sick and the cries of the dying. Farms lay abandoned, animals wandered the fields, untended and starving. As the plague advanced, entire families vanished overnight. Whole villages were left as ghost towns, wind whispering through shattered shutters and weeds overtaking abandoned gardens. In some places, no one remained to bury the dead. Bodies piled in streets and fields, left for crows and stray dogs. From Rome's marble piazzas to England's foggy countryside, death wore no crown and spared no soul. The old order of knights, lords, and clergy collapsed under the weight of a plague that respected no rank and listened to no prayer. The Black Death was not only a silent invader, but a grotesque artist that painted human bodies with terror. It started innocently, a headache, a light fever, symptoms easily dismissed after a day's work in the fields or at the docks. But within hours, the real nightmare unfolded. Victims' lymph nodes swelled into grotesque lumps called buboes, sometimes as large as apples or oranges. These lumps turned black and oozed foul-smelling pus, giving the plague its infamous name. Then came internal bleeding. Dark, bruise-like blotches bloomed across the skin, as if ink had spilled under the flesh. People vomited blood, gasped for breath, and suffered crippling pain that twisted them into positions of agony. The disease moved with a cruel swiftness. A merchant might eat supper with his family at night, only to be found dead before dawn. A young bride might kiss her groom goodbye at sunrise, and by evening he lay lifeless and bloated on their wedding bed. Witnesses described the smell of death hanging over cities like a suffocating fog. Doctors, powerless and terrified, wore long robes and beak-shaped masks filled with herbs and vinegar, hoping to ward off evil air. Priests stumbled from house to house, muttering prayers over the dying, only to collapse themselves days later. Parents abandoned their children, siblings shut each other out. People left entire cities behind, fleeing into forests and mountains, hoping to escape an invisible curse. But there was no escape. The symptoms marked the body like a grim signature, a message from death itself that life was no longer theirs to claim. And as each body fell silent, the plague marched forward, searching for its next victim. The great equalizer. Death during the Black Death did not come quietly. It roared through streets, shattered families, and turned vibrant cities into silent graveyards. Within days of infection, even the strongest bodies surrendered. Noblemen died in their gilded chambers, their wealth powerless against the invisible invader. Peasants collapsed in muddy fields, tools still in hand. Priests, kings, merchants, beggars, death swept them all into the same dark embrace. In towns, the air filled with the endless tolling of church bells, each chime marking another life lost. Carts piled with corpses rattled through narrow alleys. So many died that graveyards overflowed. New pits, mass graves, were dug outside city walls, vast trenches filled day and night. In some places, the living had to carry their loved ones themselves, stumbling through streets in tears, leaving bodies at church steps, hoping for a final blessing that might never come. The smell of rot choked entire districts. Stray dogs and wild pigs feasted on unburied bodies. Birds circled above, drawn by the scent of decay. Children watched parents die and were left to wander alone. In some households, every member perished, homes sealed shut, left as eerie time capsules of meals half-eaten and beds still unmade. Death became so common that it lost its shock. Neighbors passed each other in the streets without a word, eyes downcast, as if acknowledging a silent agreement. We are next. The plague didn't just kill people, it killed hope, community, and the sense of safety that once bound medieval life together. It was not just an ending, it was a brutal erasure of everything that made life recognizable. In a world teetering on the edge of annihilation, people turned to any possible cure, no matter how bizarre, painful, or cruel. Many patients screamed through these tortures, only to die days later in even greater agony. The rich hired private doctors, built isolated retreats, and fled to mountain villas. Yet death followed them like a shadow. Meanwhile, the poor relied on street healers who sold snake oil remedies, magic amulets, and holy relics. Some sought out witches or wise women who offered potions made from roots and crushed insects. Religion offered another escape. People formed massive processions, whipping themselves bloody to show repentance and beg for divine mercy. Others clung to relics, pieces of saints' bones or splinters said to be from the true cross, hoping for miraculous protection. Yet despite these desperate acts, no real cure existed. People tried everything, bathing in vinegar, carrying bouquets of flowers under their noses, even avoiding certain foods and colors believed to attract the plague. None of it worked. It wasn't until centuries later, with the rise of modern science and antibiotics, that the true cause, a bacteria spread by fleas, was understood. But in those dark years, each failed cure was another blow to an already shattered faith. People learned bitterly that neither gold nor prayer nor pain could stop the silent killer that moved unseen among them. When the plague clouds finally began to lift in the late 1350s, Europe was no longer recognizable. Nearly half the population had vanished. Fields stood wild and overgrown. Once bustling villages sat silent, and entire cities became ghostly husks, haunted by memories of laughter and life. The sudden emptiness had staggering effects. With so many laborers gone, surviving workers found themselves in high demand. Serfs and peasants who once toiled under cruel lords gained unexpected power. They could demand better wages, more freedom, and even mobility, a spark that would eventually help burn down the rigid feudal system. Markets collapsed, then slowly reshaped themselves. Luxury goods became scarce. Families who had once fought over land now abandoned it, unable to farm alone. New social classes rose and traditional hierarchies began to crumble. The church, once the ultimate authority, saw its power shaken to the core. People questioned why God would allow such devastation. They turned away from elaborate rituals and began to seek more personal faith, or even turned to reason and science, the first rumblings of a change that would one day blossom into the Renaissance. Art took on darker tones. Painters filled canvases with images of skeletons dancing with the living, a reminder that death spared no one. Literature became obsessed with fragility and fate. Songs, once about love and heroism, now mourned vanished families and broken promises. In the countryside, abandoned farmhouses became shelters for wanderers. Cities slowly reopened, but fear lingered in every handshake, every crowded street. Though life crept back, it was life built on ashes, fragile, haunted, and forever changed. The Black Death did not simply fade into dusty pages of history books. Its legacy still echoes in every corner of the modern world. It redefined how societies dealt with disease. Quarantines were invented, cities began building walls and checkpoints to control movement, and the idea of public health was born. People started to understand that survival sometimes meant sacrifice, shutting doors to strangers, changing burial rites, and even destroying beloved traditions. The collective trauma seeped into the very soul of Europe. Generations carried the scars in their bloodlines, in their superstitions, and in their inherited fear of invisible enemies. The plague also seeded deeper mistrust between different faiths and communities. Jewish populations were brutally scapegoated and massacred in many cities, leaving wounds that would fester for centuries. The Black Death accelerated scientific curiosity. As people realized that prayers alone failed, scholars and doctors began searching for concrete answers. Though medicine wouldn't fully catch up for centuries, seeds of critical thinking were planted in those darkest days. Even today, echoes remain. Pandemics still remind us of that fragile balance between life and death, order and chaos. Masks, lockdowns, and the language of flattening the curve have eerie parallels to those medieval efforts to escape the unseen killer. Ultimately, the Black Death wasn't just a medieval tragedy. It was a turning point that forced humanity to evolve, to question, and to change. It taught us that life can vanish overnight, that fear can become as deadly as any plague, and that from the ashes of despair, new worlds are born. Thanks for joining us on this deep journey into the Black Death's horror and legacy. If this story made you reflect on our own times, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. Our next video, Secrets of the Samurai, Japan's warrior legacy, is coming soon. You won't want to miss it.